Hello, my name is Jessie, and this is my first BookTube channel posting. I am rather new to BookTube. Up until about 2017, YouTube was just used for music for me. And then somebody introduced me to Good Mythical Morning, which has been the extent of Beyond Music for me for YouTube. And then I don't know what I was looking at, but I ran across Mike's book reviews and I was like, oh my goodness, what is this? And so from there, kind of branched out into a number of different booktubers. And now I think I'm subscribed to like 50. But I'm geeking out over it because when I talk to people about books, they think they want to talk to me about books, usually about the latest bestseller, and then they realize that it's not going to stop at the book. I'm going to recommend other books, probably 20 or 30 other books, and tell them about my favorite authors and everything else and kind of geek out all over them, and then they kind of slowly back away. And so I'm hoping that this is going to fulfill my bookish needs in my life. As far as conversation goes, obviously the books themselves do most of that. But so I'm going to kind of start out with my favorite books. These are the 10 books that I recommend most often when people actually ask me what I think would be a good book to read. I don't have all of them on me at the moment. We are planning on moving in the next 2 months or so. But the ones that I do, I will show you. So the first one is House of Leaves. I don't have this one on me. This one is in a book tub somewhere, like one of those Tupperware tubs. House of Leaves is a divisive book. You either really love it and you tell everybody you know about it, or you really hate it and you have 10,000 reasons why you hate it. I love it. It was one of the very first books that I made a point of getting on the day that it was released, which is when I was in high school. So I actually had to have my mom go get it for me. But I loved it. I loved the weirdness of it. I love the story within a story within a story. I love the kind of supernatural aspect to it. It started off with Zampano, who he was an elderly gentleman with quite a few cats, and then he died. And then Johnny Truant comes in and he goes into the guy's apartment. I think he might have been there to clean it up, or it's been a while since I've read it. And so he goes in and he finds all of Zampano's writings. And Zampano had writing everywhere, on napkins, on the walls, on paper. And so a lot of the writing is kind of revolving around Navidson. And Navidson moved his family into a house that was bigger on the inside than it was on the outside. And so he gets his brother involved in trying to track down these extra inches, and they have hallways appearing and stairs appearing. It's all very interesting. I really loved it. The thing about the book, though, is that it's got some non-standard format text in it. Text you have to use a mirror to read backwards, or flip the book over and over because it's in a spiral. And so a lot of people took issue with that. I thought it definitely lent to the quirkiness of the book. I loved the writing. In the back, there's the Pelican poems, which I thought were really great as well. Mark Danielewski, the author, his sister is Poe. So if you remember, if you're as old as I am, and you remember in the 90s, there was a song called Angry Johnny. That's Mark Danielewski's sister. And she actually did a whole album to go along with this book, which is another reason I was just so fascinated by it. Night Film. I think I have this one on me. Yes, Night Film. So Night Film by Marisha Pessl. This is also a little bit non-standard. Just kind of flipping through it, we can see that there's newspaper clippings. I just saw it. Well, there's pictures. And then if I can get back to the newspaper clipping, there's some texts, like back and forth text. There's some websites that kind of go over the death of a film director's daughter, and this kind of goes into the investigation of that death. Really interesting. I do intend to read more of her books. Theater of the Stars by N.M. Kelby. I have that one also. Theater of the Stars is a novel of physics and memory. It's about a woman. She's an astrophysicist. She studies black holes, and this is about her relationship with her mother and her mother's relationship with Lucien's father. It's really good. I've actually started another book recently by N.M. Kelby called White Truffles in Winter. And that one's also really good. It's about the love affair between like a really well-known chef and his wife and also his mistress. Let me see. In the Land of Winter by Richard Grant. I don't have that one on me. That one is packed away. That one is probably one of the lesser known books on this list. It is about a Wiccan woman who, with her daughter, moves into her aunt's house as they're between houses. Her aunt is kind of, she's not exactly thrilled to have her there. Well, this woman, she goes out at night while her aunt and her daughter are sleeping, and she makes these altars in the woods. And then some people from town find the altar. They start screaming witchcraft and Satanism, and then they kind of go on a witch hunt. And they take her daughter. It's all really emotional. It's a really, really good book. I highly recommend it. And then Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. So I'm not great at math. I was in the calculator club in middle school, but I'm not good at math. In high school, I wanted to graduate a year early, and my counselor was like, "You're failing calculus, so we got to get you out of there and put you in a class that's going to give you that credit." So she put me in science fiction class. Science fiction and I have a love-hate relationship. So my love for science fiction is that it introduced me to Frankenstein, which I probably would not have read otherwise. I was not the type of person who was reading what I was supposed to be reading in school. I was reading other stuff. In middle school, it was the first 7 books of The Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan. And then in high school, it was, I don't know, everything else. So Frankenstein, I loved it. I love the language in the book. I love the story. I was just absolutely in love with it. And then we had to write an essay on it, and my essay ended up getting passed around to other teachers in the high school because the science fiction teacher apparently thought it was wonderful. That was really embarrassing for me. But it was a wonderful book. I mean, if you're not really into classics, this is the one that I have to recommend because I read it and I loved it. The Story of Edgar Sawtelle. So The Story of Edgar Sawtelle is not my normal book. I don't normally go for books where there's like a lot of, like the storyline is really circling around animals. I don't know why. I loved Redwall. I loved Watership Down. It's not something that I naturally gravitate towards. And so The Story of Edgar Sawtelle is the story of a fictional breed of dog. And it's been compared to Hamlet. When I read the book, I had not read Hamlet yet. I have since taken a Shakespeare course in college, and so I have since read Hamlet, but I don't remember like the correlations between the play and the story. But it's a fascinating book. It is really deep, and it is obviously one of my favorite books. Let me see. The 13th Tale by Diane Setterfeld. So the 13th Tale is on here instead of Once Upon a River, only because it kind of falls into that storyline that I love so much, which is books about books, stories about stories. That is a really big thing for me, and I am going to do a video a little bit later about that whole kind of genre, not just in books, but also in movies, TV shows, series, and other stuff, because that just fascinates me to no end. And the Mountains Echoed by Khaled Hosseini. So this is another one kind of like the 13th Tale. Diane Setterfeld, I loved Once Upon a River. That could easily have been on this list instead of the 13th Tale, except for the subject matter of the 13th Tale. And The Mountains Echoed. I mean, every single book that I read by Khaled Hosseini, all of them have been wonderful. I love them. They make me cry. They break my heart in 10 million pieces. I don't know why that's a thing for me, but he has an amazing way of writing, especially when it comes to relationships, familial relationships. He has emotion down. He will break your heart. Even if you don't end up bawling through the books like I did, you're definitely going to be hitting the feels with his books. The Hobbit, J.R. Tolkien. I love Tolkien. I love the Hobbit. I love the Lord of the Rings. I love the movies, both trilogies. I don't care what you say. I love the cartoons from way back when. I love everything about it. So if you haven't read The Lord of the Rings, I highly recommend reading The Hobbit first, because The Hobbit is just such a beautiful book. The language, the imagery, it's such a beautiful and well-written book. And so this is really going to whet your appetite for more Tolkien, which if you read The Lord of the Rings first, it's not as good of writing, because obviously it stood the test of time. It's just that it's longer. And I think that if you're not used to reading long epic fantasies, and actually it's not long if you consider how long the Wheel of Time is, but I have heard it's a little bit harder to read than The Hobbit. I didn't think so. I found it just as fascinating and wonderful, but it is longer, obviously, because it's 3 books instead of 1. And then the last book on my list today is Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. Yes, this is a YA. So don't just click off my channel immediately because I have a YA book on here. This is awesome. So the imagery in here, like the chocolate mice, the clock in front of the circus, the names, the way that the circus comes into town, the pages with like constellations on them, everything about this book drew me in. I absolutely loved it. I have a hard time, like I said, with reading the stuff that I should, and so I was in a book club for a minute with my job, because we did have something where the all women's ARG was, doing a book club, and they still do. I had a hard time reading the books when I was supposed to. I would usually read them later or be reading them as we were discussing them. When it was my turn to recommend a book, that was the book that I recommended. People didn't love it as much as I did, but what are you going to do? So my favorite genre is magical realism at the moment, and I will also do a video that kind of gets into more detail about that. My favorite authors. You will notice that not all of these authors have books on my favorite books list, but I don't know what to say about that. It is what it is. Preston and Child. So they write this kind of thriller, mystery, supernatural element type books. With their Agent Pendergast novels, which I absolutely adore, and James Rollins is right there along that similar vein of mystery, thriller, magic, with his Sigma Force novels, and those are awesome. Alice Hoffman wrote White Horses. Don't read that first, but she also wrote Practical Magic and the 2 books that came after, which was like a prequel and then a pre-prequel. Really amazing books. Dove Keepers is a good book. The Museum of Extraordinary Things is another one. Diane Setterfeld, she did have, the 13th Tale on my list, Khaled, Hosseini, and The Mountains Echoed. He's the author of The Kite Runner. Amazing book. Robert Jordan, obviously, Wheel of Time. Big Wheel of Time fan. I think Mike's Book Reviews calls them wheelies. I'm a wheelie. And I'm also trying to get through Malazan on his Discord read along. I am so behind. I am still on Gardens of the Moon. I need to be almost finished with Dead House Gates because they're going to be starting the 3rd book soon, but I am going to catch up. And Victor LaValle. So the only thing I read by Victor is The Ballad of Black Tom. And that is just such an amazing book. Allegedly, it is Lovecraftian. I don't really know too much about H.P. Lovecraft other than the bad stuff I've heard. But he did make me want to make a point to read some Lovecraft. And so that is definitely on my list of things to do. At this point, that's it. My next video is probably going to be an extension of some of my favorite books, so I'll have things that are not on my top 10 list. But circling back to like BookTube. So I did pick up Sufficiently Advanced Magic based off of BookTube recommendations, Lady of the Forest based off of BookTube recommendations, Peter Pan, and a couple of other ones. So like and subscribe. Be my first like. Thank you for watching.